and welcome to another video broadcast from the Hazara Pioneers Library at Mechidtv. Hazara Pioneers is a legacy of the Hazaras of Balochistan and of course internationally. It's a historical reference point. Our purpose is to revive the spirit of the pioneers whose poster boy is, that's the poster boy, Jawan to General is the slogan. Pioneers, as you know, were known by their sporting performances, by their gamesmanship, by their competitiveness. And that's why that reference point there. And also the other following book is The Great Game, which suddenly changes the meaning of game. And War and Migration follows after the period of ABDUR in 1880s onward. So we are stretching this story. A Wazir's daughter comes from about 130 or so years. And the story was begun by displaying or describing a Hazara village before ABDUR or in the time of ABDUR, in the time of the Great Game, of which the Hazara tribes had no idea, or very little they knew. In that chapter, the zoo chapter, Chagar Amadi, the zoo chapter 1 ki Hazara village بود the zoo چی واقعه مشه که یک چند دخترو جمع منیز دختر وزیر هم است گل بیگم منیز شیرین هم است دلبهار هم است اینا دخترون میرو وزیره و دیگه دوستایشه د فکر از چی مگذره بعد از او که ای گل بیگم قار مشه سر ازی مریم پیر مگه بالچ برو زینش تو دکتر رو گمراه کده باز او ایره بدوانه بعد از او بدوا chapter 2 is the forecast. What was it? The old woman said. Tell us once more, Shireen. A group of listeners and inquirers had again clustered together, this time in a more secluded spot. باز جمع شده بودنی دکترو اما یک کنجک دیگه out of sight of most of the village houses, and there was no laughter. خاموش بودن. Only eager whisperings. شوک مکده بودن. Nodding of heads. انت معلوم شو سرخ شور میدیه و چیز طوره مگه raising of eyebrows. What had it meant? This curse. Maryam's words often had hidden meanings. Her prophecies were often difficult of interpretation, but this should clear enough. مگه مانا داره که بدوا که چی گفت که rejected a prisoner, a slave. مردود اسیر بندی. ای بدوای زبود که ور شد خوندی. There seemed little room for conjecture here, and it was all true. Of course, not one of all that eager group had any doubt as to that. مفکوره ازی دکترها در نشان میده که اینال مانا منکی و بدوای ازی چی مانا داشت. What's that story about the governor of Bamiyan's son, Dilbahar? You ought to know. You are in their confidence. اینالیک امو جمله از ناکی از دور معلوم شد که سر خوشور میداده بین یا مثلا ده اشاره گب میزدن چی مگفتن باید باین خو مگه what's that story about the governor of Bamiyan's son Dilbahar یکشی مگه که امو قصه شاهزاده بامیان چی رقمه you ought to know تو خبر داره you are in their confidence تو خو قابل اعتماد از ناسته قزنت اول میشه no one is in Gul Begum's confidence. کس دو قدر نزدیک د گل بیگم نیه که تمام گواهی در خبرش نه. The girl thus addressed replied she never seems to take much notice of their plans. She's a strange girl. As I always tell you, when men come to the house, it isn't she who waits on them. Or fetches the water. She will take her father his food and her uncle his. Perhaps, but after that, away she goes. And neither her mother nor anyone else can drag her back. The fact is, her father spoils her. The fact is, she is flying at other game. The governor of Bamiyan, question another. Darbari governor Bamiyan fikr nahi hai wo. Or perhaps a Kabul prince. Na da Bamiyan guja sar tamasha wo ya godana shahzada Kabul dil cha. Suggested a third. Ali tamam gu gere diga. God knows, whispered a girl who was evidently the center of attraction. Mag khuda medana. Ek nafar da yagas dokhtoro da bain shta bud. On who must have remained behind after the others had scattered in the morning, as she alone seemed to have heard what had passed between the Vizier's daughter and old Maryam. Whatever it is, remember the curse. Harchi basha manaishi bufamin chi guftat? Mardud, yani rad mushi, prisoner, asir mushi, a slave, a bandi mushi. Shuni yaad badwa kada da rakam. Isse kalimara tikrarna. Ah, that's it. I see it now. She is flying too high. What was it you said about her pride having a fall? Tell us again, Shirin. Your pride must have a fall. You will have dust to lick, and tears to dry. Repeated the girl thus addressed, with more gusto than such direful words spoken of her cousin would seem to warrant. Have you heard anything about her horoscope? Asked one older than the rest, who had not hitherto mingled in the general conversation. Yekdana ta'ala tadir abd khamosh manad bazu pursan mugami bakht zir tu khande stare zir mishnasi talish tokhde ana. Her horoscope taleshi. No, that is one of the things I have against my uncle. He never will have horoscopes made out. He does not believe in them. And as my father was away when I was born, the church نبوده که تو کی پیدا شده تعلیت رو سیل کنه که چی رقم هسته و هیچ کارار نکردم که هیچ چیزا به معنایه. My uncle was left in charge of the family, of course, but as he takes no interest in these things, he had nothing done at that time, and no one especially marked down the moment of my birth. از این خاطر ما خبرنیم ما کی پیدا شدم کدام وقت بود چی صاحب بود و کاکای ما که وقت سر کرده خانه بود و دقیقا مزید چندان چیزا نبود. پس ما خبر نیم کی از ما چی رقم تعلیمه. I thought you had your horoscope cast, Dilbahar said thoughtfully. مگر گفت نه ما فکر نم که دیاد از ماست که تو تعلیق سیل که دادی. And wasn't there something strange and not altogether lucky about it? که خوبش نبود دیاد تاسته. Shireen reddened. Shireen surkh mushayk faqarsh بالماء and seemed put out. Narahachda. You are thinking of some idle tale told long afterwards when the hour and even the exact day of my birth had been forgotten. تو یه چی که نو کنه قصار شروع کرده گذشت اینده داستانه را وقت ما تو رو میگم که هیچ معلوم نیه که کدام وقت ما پیدا شدم تو بعضی دو داستانه کنه را چرا مطلب میری میچ پنیده اینجی. What does that count? What is the good of bringing up old foundationless gossip that is best forgotten? یک الگویی کنه که باید فراموش کنه اونا را تو دوباره از پشیر گرفته. Now, what is going on here? Nosago, teenagers, international audience, the Hazara communities around the world. We are telling you the story of a Vizier's daughter. And we are in chapter 2, the forecasts. It means everybody is trying to interpret. هرکس میخوای معنا کنه که امو مریم پیر قد دختر وزیر کی اردوشی جنگ کدد فساد کدد اور گفته زنجو بالجو برو بزور بدوا کدد ای چی معنا داره ای داستان امروز گرد امزو میچرخه و نشان میده که دی از 1880 1890 یک نیم سال پیش دیگ دهات حضرت چی مگذشت مثل آقای خرمی دمنی داستان خومگه که یک اوخوری سنگی بن منده دازره در زیر زوخورا بن بود هر کدام دونجی از لحاظ اجتماعی هم بن بود socially locked, culturally dormant. ای داستانی درسته که A Vizier's Daughter is a work of fiction by LILLIAS Hamilton, printed in 1900 in London. But when this story is told, our purpose is to give you a background, a nishani, a direction. So the rest of the story goes like this, my dear listeners. Ah, well, but you and Gul Begum were born on the same day. بالبحر باز ما مگر تو قد دختر کاکای خی اردشم دیگه روز پیدا نشدین مگر. At almost the same hour and same spot تقریبا یک وقت اردشم پیدا شدین. Another put it somewhat viciously. Whatever is her fate is your fate. دیگه ایش چیز مگه میخی میزنه مگه ارچی بخت زو بخت است تو. Shireen, that's clear. فهمیدی شیرین؟ How so? asked the chief's daughter indignantly. یعنی چی؟ شیرین قارش بالمایه. Would you have my fate as hers? تو میخوایی که از ما مرقم تالی از ما شنا بخت از ما مرقم شنا rejected, a prisoner, a slave. She may have held her nose too high. خیلی انتم ترى غرام ورا صار شيء مثل لخت ما غورقم ننم. But what have I done that I should share the same fate? Why thrust her ill luck on me? But بختي زود سر از ما چرا چپانین شما. Besides, I was born after her. ما ازو بعد پیدا شدم. Several hours. چند ساعت بعد ما ازو بعد پیدا شدم. And a very little time makes all the difference in the world. وانمو یک فرق داره دیگه. وقتی از ما را قزوز چر گردین شما. No one thrusts ill luck on you. هیچ کس که بدبختی در سرستو چپانه نه. It's the stars. ستارایه. Dilbahar said sadly. Who can fight against them? قد ستاره کی جنگ کنه قد بخت کی جنگ کنه. They are far beyond all reach, past all control. They make one's kismet. این ستاره های قسمت جورنا مو چیز میتونی هیچ کار نمیتونی. این رقم یک دختری ازره در یک دهات ازرگی در من کوبان دی ازرستان در 1890 1880 دیمی دوران این رقم فکر نه اینی گپایه. Did they make your kismet, black-faced one? Oh, Siarui? Shireen asked petulantly. Did they cause you disgrace? She was angry at the allusion to the horoscope she had thought forgotten. چری قارشم ده کیر ما فراموش کردم می تمامی تالی تو خدورایی چرا باز بال مال میره. But which, though she denied its accuracy, و او خو گفتم تمام مجمر گفت که غلطه ای وضو ما دیگه تیم پیدا شدم و دیگه وقت پیدا شده. In her heart of hearts she dreaded. مگر دل خو خیلی یک ترس خورده که از من بدبخت نشدم ما. Dilbahar, insulted, rose angrily. This perpetual allusion to the past was unbreakable, and a quarrel seemed imminent when a shadow felt across the group. Dilbahar قال جبال ما میخوای گریشونه کی سرزیگه با میخواست جنگ بالچونه کی یک نفر سایش پیش مایا. It was Gulbegum. With her earthen milking vessel in her hands. قد کوزه خود دیست خو. She was on her way to the plain. The دشت برم. مالو گورا باش کنم برای زو گلبیگم رایی قد کوزه. In her hand, she was on her way to the plain to milk the sheep. Dilbahar, it's milking time, she said quietly. There was a strange, authoritative way about her. Dilbahar اشاره نمگه وقتی شیر باش کدوه which compelled obedience. The zoo tariq gab mizad. And Dilbahar slunk off to the house for her vessel. ورفت ki bora kuzi khabal kada bayra. And the group was soon dispersed. For Gulbegum had caught Shireen's eye, and without uttering a word had conveyed a reproach which, though it stung the chief's daughter, incited her to do something more dignified than gossip and repeat the idle tales her cousin's soul abhorred. فقط امکی مورا فقط سن شیرین دختر کاکای خورم میتر یک دفعه گل بگم میگم سیل میتر مونه بس مگه بهتره میه که میتر میگه بارا هیچ روی نشدیم سر میگه بعد بارا یه مو دیگنیتی خو نشان میده جنگ فساد نه. And Gulbegum walked on, without once turning her head to note the effect she had produced. She was thinking. بنالی مفکوره گلبیگم رالی گلبیگم کوزر گرفتار رایه که بریم مالا شیر باش کنیم دمی دوران علی فکر منه چی فکر منه دارم. She was thinking, dreaming shapeless dreams. معلوم نیه خیالات عجیب غریب ما بیمانا رقمش. She was thinking, dreaming shapeless dreams, not of the Kabul prince, not of Bamiyan. She could hardly have put her own thought into words, for they were all unformed. They carried her far beyond the Hazara hills, beyond Bamiyan, beyond the court of the Iron Amir, the man whose word was law, who swept whole villages, whole tribes off the face of the earth if they dared but disobeyed his orders, or even seemed to question him. बीबी ने कहा सवाल मना मगर बिजन करता नजर ओनो तरेगा अमीर आहानीन मगैरा इना तमाम गुलबेगम अभी फिक्राइश जी तो मरकूज बे एक चीज़ नहीं है कि दोबारा वो चीज़ फिक्र करना कि मैं चीज़ सोच लूँ दराव रकम फिक्रा माया दराव अलबत्ता ये as कोहिस्तान है हज़ारिस्तान थे रही खुलासा as बामियान हम थे as काबुल हम थे रोज़ as दरबार अब्दुर्रहमान हम थे बस इंची दरबारे अब्दुर्रहमान है जन अमीर ردراو بیان مانه کی چقدر زورگوی چقدر ظالم کی مثلا قریه را که خوش نمیامد یا مثلا میگفت که اینا بغاوت کرده اینا را جمع کرده از روی زمین. Of him she thought often کی باشه Amir Abdurrahman. She would like to see him just once. یک دفعه ببینم امیر ما. فکر میکرد که یک دفعه ما بینگرنم میره. The man with the bushy black beard and brow that was like the sky on a thundery day, now bright as sunshine, smiles. یک لحظه میبینیم که آفتاب برش شده. دربار رونق میگرفت. خوشحالی بود، شادی بود. Now fierce and terrible as he showered volleys of curses on the terror-stricken man who stood before him. از دان جارچی برم شد. اونای اسیر بود یا یکو گرفتار بود یکو کسی که دربار از یوردم شد. بازو وحشت از تو میگرنی دیگه چه رقم وحشی بودی. Dealing death with every flash from those relentless eyes. ده یک اشاره برون زندگی را خاموش میکرد. He must be wonderful. خیلی عجیب باشه. What power. چه قدرتمنده. گل بیگم در فکر نالی. Yes, she would like to see him. ما یک دفعه بینگرنم باید. And see his wives. برم خاتنویش ببینم. He had many she knew. خبر شدد که امیر چندین خاتو داره. How many? چندنا باشه. What were they like? And had they powers too? اونا هم میتونه زورآور بودن. How much authority lay in their hands? چی کارا میتونه خاتنوی امیر؟ Was there a special favorite perhaps? میگودن یزی شاید امو کتیش باشه. One who dared face him on the stormiest days, one who could dispel the clouds and coax back the sunshine. یگو شاید رقم یکشی از تمام نازدانیش باشه که مثلا دنیا رم که آو ببره پیشزو که بورد خیر خیرتی باشه. همین فکر ندارم. Unwilling at first perhaps, but yielding by slow degrees to her gentle laughter and soft winning ways. که دیل زوج طور میگره و زوج طور ای آدمی که قدر تمام روز قد مرگ سر و کار داره و نزدانی زوج چی رقم میره آرام منه مثلا خنده نبریش چی رقم خدمت نبریش این فکر همون نداره و دوباره خاتونی نزدانی کی باشه یه گل بیگم فکر نداره. What must she be like? Raven hair, of course, and eyes, laughing, mischievous eyes, and a skin, oh, so fair, with roses on her cheeks, and hands, little soft hands that knew nothing of work. شاید دستایش بسیار ریزه ریزه باشه که کار مارید نفهمه کار چیزه باشه. All dimples and chubbiness. What nonsense. باز مگه what nonsense مادر فکر نمی چی رقم خاطویه باز. What a wife for such a man. ایچ رقم خاطویه بریزی ای رقم مرتکه. No, she must be tall. باید خوب قد بلند باشه. I wonder if she is taller than I. از مگه tall باشه او. And the Hazara beauty drew up her stately head and squared her broad shoulders. She must be a big woman, the Amir's wife, tall and graceful, light and active, severe as he, proud as he, and as relentless. Cruel too, perhaps, for women are sometimes more cruel than men. ای خیالاتی فکرای عزیزان من چگر ای مو فکره بود که گل بیگم که خیلی دقارم هسته قد شیرین و دیگه دخترو که اونا دباری تالیزی گبز داد گبی که باید پرمشت مکد پاس آورد ای که مور آلی بریش که مال را شیر باش کنه دینی فکره بود. Strange stories reached the Hazara hills of the Kabul harems. از حرم درباری کابل قصه ها که مرسید ده هزاره ده کوهستان های هزاره عجیب و غریب داستان آمد. those walled-in houses where hundreds of women lived together. خانه یک دیوالای کلان داره و صدها خاتون در من یک خانه حرم مگوره. And not always in peace. ضروري که خیر خیریتی باشه. That must be dreadful. No roaming about, free over hills and dales, no paddling in cool streams on a sunny day. مگه یخ چی رقم زندگی خب بند قیدیه نه تو دبلی کوهستان رفته میتونی نمینی چشمام را پای خورا من یخ تر میتونی گلازه. No sitting under a shade of bushes, which to Gul Begum's mind, because she knew no other, seemed like great forest trees. Yes, that would be intolerable there. Was no doubt about that. ای مفکوره زو که درباره حرم فکر مونه بس یک تقریبا بیش از 100 خاتون در من یک حرم که جمع باشه بس اینجی بلگم فکر نمو یک بندی خانه ای چی رقم زندگیه بس این فکر زویه چون امو داستانی که وشنده درباره زو به زو زندگی خود خسیل منه که موچی آزاد بلی کوهستان را مریم. Those other women had a better time. Those washed out women. باز فکر نمیکنن نه اونا زیاد بهتر زندگی داره. حمام دارن، خودخور پاکنن، مشیان، رنگ برنگی جورنن خود را. Who lived down south, where hundreds of women who lived down south in the hot burning plains, kafirs of course, and therefore outcast in the next world, but not in this. Certainly those women had their paradise in this world. اصلا خو کافر لیکن ده بیش زندگی نن ده دنیا با چی زندگی باشه. What was to be their portion in the next? She had heard of them from her father, women who remained seated while their husbands stood. پدرشم رفت آمد کرده بوده کابل باز مگفته بوده قد گل بیگم که اینتر خاتونوم است اونجی که قرار شسته اونجی مرتکو مای خدمت نه اونها اینسان ده فکر نبود چون که خاتو یعنی خدمت ولی گل بیگم در من یک دهاتی ازره یک نیم سال پیش. Women who were waited on by men servants as well as maids, women who drove and rode about with men. که سوار مشدن امرای مرتکو بالش در مرفتن داشت دنیا را چکار زدم میامده بودن. ایت داستانه را گل بیگم خبر شده بود از پدر خو و فکر مکد ریزی چیزا. Then there was that strange story about the great field, یک کلان میدان. ایم درباره گل بیگم هم دزیم فکر بود کی چه رقم ستوریه. Where men rode races on horses, and races on camels, and races in vehicles, some sort of car on two wheels, but light, very light. یک ماشین است مثل موتور وری است مگر دو پای داره. And beautifully polished and bright. How did they get that polish? چطور پالیش کرده باشه ایره؟ What could make wood shine like that so that you could see your face reflected in it? What skilled workmen they must be, and all of that, and all for what? Why? That the winners of these races might go up to a tent, a great white tent, from which fine clothes of red and white and blue were suspended and fluttered in the breeze, and there, with uncovered heads, receive their reward from a chief, a general, no, nothing of that kind, from a woman with their hair like gold, polished, shining gold, that must be a wondrous sight, golden hair. But what made it gold? What a position, what a glory. Those men who had won, bareheaded before her, proud to be worthy so to stand, and Gul Begum sighed. Kafirs, of course, or such things would be impossible For women are born to be in subjugation to men, to wait upon them and serve them. Must they forever be in this subjugation? وقاينا كافر عندي مسلمانية مي قم تشرق مسلمانية كمرتكا بايا اللي مثلا خاطر خدمتكنا يشرق مسلمانية فكرنا قد خد خو بس مقلنا هي خيلي شاني خوب باشي دي ممكن مختلف فكرة ايش رانغ وشيب نادرة ما مراد راو. Must they forever be in subjection? Why? Because it was God's law and there was no disputing that. قانون خدايا خاطو خدمتنا بس خلاص يرجل بيقوم بفكر خود خو بس إيه جانز مجمع يجي رقم خاتونو يا كده ونجي ماشين دوم ده حرامي أمير استكي إنت كرام منا. But she had known one woman. يا خاطور البتو مش ناخد. Years ago, چند سال پیش, when she was quite a little child, a woman even Hazara men looked up to and loved and waited on. من يا هزرام يا خاطر خما دیدم که هر امو که مایا مردکم د قدم از مفتاح خدمت کو د جای بیشن منو یک مثال از اون د ذهن زمده چون که از هزرا بور نشده ای نه اما استوریا یک داستانه که از خاتونوی امیر میشن نویده بوده دزو فکر نه باز مگه البته من یا هزرام امیر رقم یک نفر تیر شده. It was her grandmother, Haji Begum, her father's mother. I am something like her. She would say to herself and smile over her bowl in which the milk was frothing almost to the brim. شیرم تقریباً باش شده دیگه. سرایم پر شده، خیالاتم خالی شده خلاصه. But she was fairer than I, though not so tall, and she was not a Hazara. Who was she, I wonder? And where did she come from? I am glad I am tall. My father says I should have been a boy. Why was I not a boy? If I were only a man, I would not stay here in these mountains. At least, not altogether. I would travel. I would go and see those white-faced women. Not that I would pay them homage or wait upon them. Certainly not. That would be unseemly in a Hazara. But I would see them and the strange institutions of their tribe. مگر ما باید اونا رو ببینم و یک قبیله زنار بشناسم اینا از حضرت برو اینا کی مردم چی رقمه هیچ چیز نمیفهمم گل بگم اینی خیالاتایش فقط دوباره outside. Those great long vehicles باز در فکریم دراز موترها مارم افته که کسی زور شنده bigger than a row of 20 elephants که 20 دانه پیلم که استا کنی از او کدام اونگا درازه that move so fast that no horse is swift enough to follow them. از اسب کده تیز. How on earth do they move so fast? What runs faster than a horse? از اسب کده تیز چیز باشه. Vapor, smoke, بخار, دود, باد. Her father had said. آتش گفته یک دفعه کی از دود و باده کی از اسبم تیزه. But there must be a mistake there. She could not have heard aright. That was, of course, ridiculous. But he had said something about a long tube from which smoke ascended. That must be a curious tribe. She would certainly like to visit them. But instead, as her milking vessel was full, she rose placed it on her head and walked slowly home. Maryam and her curse were for the time being quite forgotten. But why Maryam filal faramosh shuda, she lived in a dream world of her own. یک دنیای خیالاتی از خود گذاری بود. And the trifling occurrences of her uneventful life. که تمام روز تقریبا همون یک گبم بیدار شو برو مالا باش کو مثلا بیا ایرج جمع کو اون بود دیگه. But little interest for her. یعنی چیزی دلچسپی برش نداشت از خاطر تخیلات چی خیلی قوی بود و علمی تمامی داستان را. Today the story is this chapter 2 is complete actually. And in this story, as you saw, was the forecast. What is coming up? يخوالي بدوا كذاي مريم بير على دكتور وزير وديجا دكتورو أنا بعم چیز مفکوره داشتن چی رقم تعبیر کردن چی رقم فکر میکردن درباره طالبینی درباره بخت هوروسکوپ ستار بازینی کی فلان تو بدوا کذا اینی ترینی گوا این مفکوره و وقت را نشان داد. بعد از او گل بیگم چی رقم د خیالات خو درباره outside هزاره فکر میکرد. It means no access, no information. همزی خاطر که پدر از گل بیگم چون که وزیری میر صاحب و مورا مایا در طرف دیگه قبایل و در طرفای کابل و غیره این داستانا را گل بیگم میخواد خود چی می سر ببینه که خیلی حیرانه که از هزاره برو چی قصه. اینی داستان بود chapter 2 and I hope that you enjoyed the narration and you are getting to know this story of a Vizier's daughter, which is a cultural heritage, a legacy, and should be read aloud in groups so that you make a connection, a mental, a reference point of connection. Then coming to the facts and remembering what happened after the fall of the Hazara lands. What happened afterwards and how does it connect to the Hazara pioneers and how did we forget about all of these? That will continue in the next video transmission.